Hi, welcome to the second edition of Deep Six, the Deep State. This is going to be every night. I shortened it now from 6 to 6:30 because I was losing my voice yesterday on the last one. Let me first just explain what the deep state is, because that phrase has kind of crept into our vocabulary. The deep state is a term that's been used, originally the left invented it, for the permanent establishment of the intelligence military complex in a government. In other words, the CIA, the FBI, the various other fundamental organs of state, and ultimately they're putting together, and they kind of have their own rules, their own existence. It came into great use during the 60s, or the concept came into use in the 60s after the Kennedy assassination, where many people felt that Kennedy was shot in part because of a conspiracy that involved the CIA and may even have involved the FBI. And it was felt that the deep state orchestrated the removal of Richard Nixon. Not that he didn't deserve it, but that fundamentally the assistant director of the FBI, Mark Felt, who was also known as Deep Throat, guided Woodward and Bernstein each step of the way on what to find out to get Richard Nixon out of office. And many have described that as a coup, which in a certain sense it was. The Iran-Contra investigation of Ronald Reagan and the facts that emerged and the way they emerged all smack of deep state involvement. Deep state really works by leaking with the media. It is based on intelligence findings or made-up intelligence that makes its way into the media, that creates its own fictitious alternate reality. And that's precisely what's happening now in this so-called Russia scandal. There's no basis for it. There are no facts that underscore it. It's just there. And people believe that it's true. And the more belief piles upon belief piles upon belief, the more the scandal acquires a life of its own, without proof, without confirmation, without anything. And this can happen very easily. Do you remember back the Valerie Plame scandal under Bush 43, where Valerie Plame was a CIA agent and her identity was published in the Roland Evans column, I'm sorry, the Bob Novak column, and people said, wow, you outed a CIA agent, that's illegal. And a special prosecutor was appointed to say who gave him the story. Novak, of course, refused to reveal his source, and the special prosecutor worked for 2 years on the subject and eventually came to the conclusion that there was no scandal, that the name had been leaked by someone who was authorized to do it in the first place. They then indicted Scooter Libby, Cheney's VP assistant, for some statements he made that were not true during the investigation. But he never would have gone to jail if there weren't an investigation. He was basically a casualty of the probe. And that kind of thing is going on now, where based on no evidence, based on no proof, based on a total failure to verify any accusation, they are really taking Donald Trump to the cleaners. And they're going through each person of his associates, of his staff, and they're trying to build a case that they were colluding with the Russians to influence the election. Now, first of all, the release of Hillary's emails and hacking of the DNC computer had nothing to do with Hillary losing the election. The computer was hacked on July 22nd, 2016, right on the eve of the Democratic convention, right on the heels of the Republican convention that was the week before. And when the material came out, before it came out, Hillary was 4 points behind Trump. And at the end of her convention, she was 11 points ahead of Trump. She gained 15 points in the course of that week. And even when you do it as a daily polling, she gained on Sunday night and on Monday night after the Saturday release. So she couldn't possibly have been hurt by that. Yet a narrative emerged, fed by Hillary, that she wouldn't have lost the election except for Russian intervention. And there was even a charge that Russia was spreading disinformation, whereas the only thing that emerged from the hack, if Russia did it, there's some evidence now that Seth Rich exposed that the DNC may have done it, or others may have done it. But even if the Russians did it, it was scarcely lethal. And Hillary claims that it cost her the election, but that's baloney. And secondly, there is no evidence at all that this was a deliberate act arranged with Donald Trump. If the Russians did it, they probably did it to help Trump get elected and to defeat Hillary. Okay, they're entitled to their opinion, but it had no effect. It had nothing to do with the election. And that fact just gets totally lost in this. So now it's innuendo and rumor based on half partial statements and half-truths. Yesterday, Brennan testified before the Senate Intelligence Committee. John Brennan was chief of intelligence under Obama and basically ran intel for the 8 years of Obama's presidency. And during that period, he said that he was first alerted to the problems. I'm sorry, here we go. That he was first alerted to the problems when evidence came to his possession. Let me just read that. When evidence came into his possession that certain people had interfered with and leaked documents, and that there was evidence that there was collusion with the Russians. He said, I encountered and am aware of information and intelligence that revealed contacts and interactions between Russian officials and U.S. persons involved in the Trump campaign that I was concerned about because of known Russian efforts to suborn such individuals. And it raised questions in my mind, again, whether or not the Russians were able to gain the cooperation of those individuals. That's the quote from his testimony yesterday. Well, first of all, where did he get it? He had been investigating these links ever since a year before 2015, and he still hasn't produced any evidence that the collusion existed. This investigation has been going on for over a year, and there is no conclusive evidence. And in fact, there's no evidence, none one way or the other. The only piece of evidence that exists is that the British intelligence, MI6, notified the U.S. that they had picked up signals that indicated that Russia was planning to hack the DNC computers. And they warned the Democrats in December of 15 and again in June of 16. And the government passed the warning on to the Democrats. And the idiot, the kid who was running the computer, treated it as a complaint from a customer and was sent him over to the help desk and did nothing effective to deal with it. But that allegation and then the allegations that Trump people were involved in it stem exclusively from information provided in a phony dossier amassed by former British spy Christopher Steele. And all of the elements of that dossier have been totally debunked, totally proven to be false. And we have a book coming out, Eileen and me, in the middle of August called Rogue Spooks. The intelligence community tries to destroy Donald Trump. And it's based in part on that dossier, on the flaws in it, the obvious flaws. In 5 minutes, you can learn that that dossier is incorrect. And yet that was the basis of the whole investigation. And when you dig down and dig down and dig down, that's all they have. So it's a complete phantom crime. And for this to be the basis of of an investigation that can hobble a president is really beyond the pale. I'm just pulling up your comments now so that I can respond to them and read them. But the idea that you can launch an investigation based on nothing and then go after people criminally for failing to cooperate with the investigation is just incredible. And it really, to me, is the kind of overkill that the deep state resorts to. That's just the kind of thing that they do. Wesley wrote, thank you for your new book on spooks. Wait till you read it. And Patricia asks, how do we stop that? Well, in our book, we propose a very specific remedy. Right now, when the intelligence community wants to surveil somebody, they need a warrant from the FISA court, which was set up to do that. And the FISA court consists of a panel of 9 U.S. District Court judges who rotate in their service. And they're picked by the Chief Justice, so Roberts picks them. And they issue these warrants. Now, the problem is it's only a one-sided discussion. The intel community comes in and says, we think this guy's a spy, we think he's a terrorist, we think he's subversive, and we'd like to keep an eye on him. And they look at it and they say, how much proof do you have? What do you know? And 99 times out of 100, literally, they grant the warrant. A few times they modify it, but they usually grant it. Well, I think that what we ought to have is a public defender built into that system who has a staff, who has subpoena power, who can do all investigations. And when a FISA warrant request is considered, he's kind of the devil's advocate. He's going to come up with why it shouldn't be done. And most of the time he wouldn't challenge it, but a lot of the time he would and could, and there would be some check then on the ability of the intelligence agencies to run amok. But right now there's none. And once they get to the stage of a special prosecutor, you really are opening the door to an investigation that just goes on and on and on with no reason and no purpose in it, and certainly nothing to underscore it. I'm going to talk about some other topics here. The horrible terrorist attack in Britain. Clearly, this kind of thing is done by the jihadists. They've now found who did it, and he's a terrorist, a jihadist. And the answer to it, how do we prevent this in the future, is hopefully our intel community can find it, and hopefully they're going to be given the tools to do it. A lot of them were taken away from them by Obama, and I hope they're now given back to them. But ultimately, what's necessary here is you have to go through the same process I just went through the other day when I went to a Yankee game. I had to go through a metal detector, and the bags I was carrying had to be screened in a metal detector. And bear in mind that we have completely succeeded in stopping air piracy, hijacking, or terrorism on airplanes through the use of metal detectors. They've proven phenomenally effective. Literally, we've gone for, 15 years now without that being a factor. So I believe every time you have a large concert or an event or a theater performance or anything with a significant crowd, you got to have metal detectors, and you got to assign police to man them, and you got to check all bags. If necessary, warn somebody, electronically pat them down, and you just need to do that. It's something we have to accept because it's fundamental to being able to stay safe. I also believe, while we're on the subject, that schools, high school, all schools, should have metal detectors. There is no reason why we have to worry that our children are going to be assaulted or killed in school when we could have a metal detector that would solve that problem and avoid that difficulty. Now, there is, I'm sorry, I just want to get to another story here. One of the things that I find incredible here is that we're dealing with sabotage by leaks. For example, today's story is that President Trump met with two Russians in the Oval Office, the foreign minister and another guy, and gave them information in which he said that, which was classified material. And it involved ways to track terrorists and ways to deter air hijacking. And then the accusation came out that he was given this information by Israel, that Israel developed the technology, and that Trump had revealed Israel's role in it. And Trump today denied that he knew that Israel had a role, and denied that he had mentioned Israel in the course of the meeting with the Russians. Well, okay, I don't know how the facts of that play out. But the source for the story in the New York Times, Washington Post, was according to current and former officials. And every story you see about Trump, about intelligence, about leaks, about Russia, are all sourced that way. current and former officials, repeatedly, over and over. The most important stories are sourced that way. Now, that says a couple of things. First of all, it says that most likely the sourcing for this information are basically Obama moles buried in the administration. 2 days ago, Trump administration revealed 3 leakers in the White House, actually in the White House, who were fingered for leaking stuff to the media. And they were all appointed by Obama. But what Obama did was, in the closing month of his presidency, he processed them all through civil service so that they could not be fired. They were there because they were there really for their lifetime, because you can't fire a civil service employee. And what happened was that they now sit there forever and leak with impunity. And these guys are not in some agency, they're in the White House. They were close enough to know what Trump said to the Russians in that meeting. It could have been the guy who mops the floors who overheard it. Could have been the secretary out in the hallway. It literally invades the inner sanctum of the White House itself. James just flashed me a question: was the White House bugged? Well, it may be, but you don't need to bug it when you have Obama operatives there with big eyes and big ears who are willing to pick up the phone and leak anything they see there. And Obama deliberately processed them all through the civil service, so it'll be a very difficult task to get rid of them. The White House staffers are not political appointees that could be fired at will by Trump. But, and this is the news story, they are career federal government employees or former Obama political appointees who were burrowed into the civil service by being converted to career employees before Obama's term ended, and would in most cases have to go through a civil service procedure to be terminated. Sarah asks, do I trust the FBI? Well, it's not a question of trusting the Bureau. In our book, Rogue Spooks, we go through the history of this. The FBI used to be a conservative organization that would hunt down communists, some real, some imaginary, and did a rather effective job of stopping intelligence from penetrating the American government. But when Holder became the Attorney General, he stopped all that. And he fired as many people as he could, as many vacancies. He reorganized the whole department, changed everybody's functions, encouraged everybody to leave, and replaced them all with radicals and liberals who were strong political supporters of Obama. Brennan did the same at the CIA. So these folks that man the FBI and man the CIA, who used to be impartial, or at least, and sometimes conservative, now are all very, very leftist and see their mission as preserving the legacy and the policies of Obama and getting rid of Trump any way that they can. And that's why you have all of these horrific examples of lack of security in our government. Today's lunch alert is, not lunch alert, today's Deep Six, the Deep State, is sponsored by Patriot Gold. A lot of people bought gold over the last year or two or three, and then they have not revisited the issue of, is their portfolio the right one? Because there are new metals you can invest in. There's tremendous volatility in the prices of some of these metals, and the tax laws have changed, so the tax consequences of having these investments have changed significantly. And you really need to keep up to date on what those changes are and adjust your portfolio to listen to them. And most of the time when you call the guy who sold it to you, he's only interested in selling you more because he just makes money off the commissions from the initial sale. So contact the Patriot Gold Group and take their 5-minute challenge, where they say, in 5 minutes, you'll describe your portfolio to us, and we'll bring to your attention factors you might want to consider in readjusting your portfolio. It's patriotgoldgroup.com, patriotgoldgroup.com. And the phone number is 800-476-5675. That's 800-476-5675. 800-476-5675. 56.75. Trump has submitted his budget, and it's a very good budget. It calls for very significant reductions in all areas of domestic spending, particularly in the area of anti-poverty. Let me give you a statistic that I think will knock your socks off. When Trump took office, 27% of the American people were on welfare. That is to say, means-tested welfare programs. Not Social Security, not Medicare, not veterans benefits, but welfare, food stamps, Medicaid, supplemental nutrition, and the whole bit. When he left office, 36% are covered by that. He literally took it from a quarter to a third of the American people, putting almost everybody on some form of welfare. Well, the new Trump budget does a great job of getting rid of that. He shifts $54 billion this year from non-defense spending to defense spending. I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes just said my volume is too low. I'll talk louder. And he cut the State Department, including foreign aid. We give 50 countries more than $500 million a year in foreign aid, including countries like Kenya and Tanzania and Mozambique, and countries which really don't need it and don't deserve it and aren't our friends. From the EPA, from the Department of Agriculture, he would eliminate this public support for PBS, let it be supported by individual contributions and corporate donations, and he cut $840 billion from Medicaid. So people say that these cuts do not affect entitlements. Well, he's cut a big one. Medicaid has grown to a point where it's equal to Medicare in its cost, and it now consumes about 15% of the federal budget, and about 12 to 13% of the federal budget. And Obama expanded it like crazy. Now, Medicaid has two parts. 2/3 of it used to be for old people in nursing homes, which were not covered by Medicare. They're covered by Medicaid. 1/3 was for poor people who were on welfare. What Obama did was to expand it way beyond welfare so that it covered millions, in fact tens of millions, of people who were living above the poverty level. And as a result, the cost of it expanded dramatically, and now 60% of Medicaid is spent on the poor and only 40% on people in nursing homes. By cutting Medicaid, which Trump just recommended, we can really begin to scale back the entitlement state. But he didn't just cut Medicaid. He's proposing $193 billion in cuts to SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Insurance Program, food stamps in our vernacular. And you know how food stamps are misused, how they're sold for drugs, how the people who apply for them are not entitled to them in many cases. Illegal immigrants get them. A recent audit by the GAO showed that almost 40% of the payments involved some element of fraud. He's cutting $20 billion from temporary assistance for needy families, TANF. That's the replacement for welfare. It's for mothers and their dependent children. And he's cutting it by requiring them to work, setting time limits, and doing other stuff to really help them end the life of dependency. And he's cutting $40 billion from the Earned Income Tax Credit. It turns out that 1/3 of the money being spent by the Earned Income Tax Credit is fraudulent. It's not people who are entitled to them. And we need to stop that, and I think he's done it. This budget really offers a blueprint for doing it. It's a heck of a good job. Now, one of the things that I think he needs to do is that he's got to deal with the money we spend to the United Nations. I believe that the U.S. should say that until the United Nations repeals the resolution that it passed earlier last year, and which we refused to veto, the U.S. for the first time abstained as opposed to vetoing it, condemning Israel and demanding a return to the pre-1967 borders, where the middle of Israel, the belt, the middle of it is only 11 miles wide, a completely indefensible nation, set up as a compromise to get the UN to approve Israel's existence in the first place. And what I'm proposing, and Senator Ted Cruz is as well, is to stop all U.S. aid to the United Nations unless they repeal that. And currently, we fund a really disproportionate share of the UN. We give the UN 27% of its funding, and we're only 4% of the world's population. We contribute $1.5 billion of the $4 billion for refugees, and those are the terrorists in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank who are kept in business by the funds we're giving the UN to give them. That figure is in addition to about $500 million that we give directly to the terrorists, to Hamas and Hezbollah and the Palestinian Authority. We got to eliminate all of that. Of the peacekeeping missions, which tend to be permanent, which tend to really accomplish very little, we have peacekeepers now, I think, in 40 different countries. There are no war. The wars have long since stopped, but the peacekeepers remain. And we pay 1.2 of the $5 billion that's spent on that program. And we just need to end that. One of the really exciting pieces of news that's emerging from Washington is that President Trump, has now begun the process of cutting the $7 billion a year in payments we give insurance companies to operate Obamacare. What's happened is that the House of Representatives sued and said that money was illegally appropriated. And the Obama administration, of course, opposed it. And now Trump has gone into court and saying, wait a minute, the government's switching its position. We now agree with the House. Please delay this suit for 90 days while we make that adjustment and deal with it administratively. And the courts have agreed to do that. So within the next 90 days, you can expect Trump to kill Obamacare. You see, Obamacare basically says, we're going to make you take insurance, and we're going to make you take insurance that covers all of 10 different diagnostic categories, many of which you don't need and don't want. Maybe you aren't in danger of becoming a drug addict, so you don't need substance abuse. Maybe you're a man, so you don't need maternity benefits. And these elements are all included now as mandatory elements of Obamacare. And when a deficit results, because the premiums are too high and the coverage demands things that people don't want and they can't afford the premiums, the feds write a check to the insurance company, basically a form of welfare, and give it to them to plug that hole in the deficit. If that check is not forthcoming, the insurance companies can't operate under Obamacare, and they'll have to withdraw. Obamacare will literally be dead with a stroke of a pen. Then, what will replace it? Well, it's not feasible for the Democrats to take the position that we're not going to vote for anything. They're not going to vote for any kind of replacement for it. That just isn't possible. And if they attempt to do that, they're going to be leaving 20 million people without any insurance. So it really will force the Democrats to come to the table and craft a bipartisan alternative to Obamacare. And that's a very important move, and I think it's a brilliant move by Trump and his administration. So I hope you like this. We're going to streamline the process of getting the comments in, because I want to include those more in what we do. But thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And remember, if you miss a broadcast, many people have written that they're driving, but 6 to 6:30, it's why it's called drive time. You can just go online to my Facebook page, and it's right there. It sits there permanently, really, and you can watch it anytime you want. And I'll be doing it every day, and I hope you like it. Yesterday, we did the first one, and during that broadcast, we were rated #1 on Facebook for the most watched streaming video in the entire world at the time that I was broadcasting, which is just incredible. I'm amazed. And we've had almost 50,000 people who have watched that video. So please come on and hang around and listen, and I hope you pick up stuff. Thanks a lot for watching. Oh, and by the way, please go to dickmorris.com. Every day I have a lunch alert, a video, just like this one, only it's about 3 or 4 minutes long, on a new topic. Tomorrow's video, for example, I'll talk about what Brennan, what alerted Brennan to the Russian issue, the Russian investigation, some of which we covered today. And if you sign up there with your e-address, I'll send you my video alerts, lunch alerts, every single day. Thanks a lot, and let's remember the Deep Six, the deep state. Thanks.